Hey, what's going on? Dr. Medic here. For those who don't know how this works, I usually take one of my hour-plus long videos and split it into segments based on class for those who may have been turned away due to the daunting runtime of the original video. This time it is my TF2 biggest weapon Glowup first unlocks video, which was nearly 2 hours long. To make it a bit more interesting, since I didn't go over stock weapons, I will go over stock weapons that have changed for that class in each video, and they'll be placed at the end, so if you've seen the original video, just skip to the end, there will be something new for you. I've also done some re-editing since the video was a ranking and that wouldn't make sense in this context, and I've also re-recorded some lines since the original mic I had was pretty crappy. Not that this one's much better, but hopefully it is a little bit more pleasant to your ears. Go and check out the original video if you haven't already, and you can tell me what you think. The first 4 classes have been completed already. We're now going to discuss Heavy Weapons Guy. Got a real nasty piece of work right here. I do not like this weapon, and I felt dirty getting footage for it. No, it's not the Phlogistator, Short Circuit, Vaccinator, or any sniper rifle except the classic Insanely Sleeper. This weapon pisses in the cereal of any class that has mobility. It's the Natascha.
Oh! Run! Run! I'm coming for you!
Seriously, I do not like the Natascha. It's just an annoying weapon to fight against, and not all that great. It's still a minigun, don't get me wrong, the damage is unbelievably high, but I do not like it, not because it's overpowered, but because it takes very little skill to use, and it's just a pain to fight against, even if you use the strafe method. Better hope they aren't at close to mid-range. Tantrum over, the Natascha slows enemies down to 113 hammer units briefly for each shot that hits them. For reference, Heavy while spun up moves at 110. The effectiveness does begin to taper off at greater distances. It also comes with the upside of a 20% damage resistance to all incoming damage as long as you are either below 50% health or the damage would put you below 50% health. This damage resistance does also allow you to survive 3 pills, 2 headshots, 3 scattergun blasts, so it isn't completely useless. The downsides include a 25% damage penalty as well as a 30% slower spin-up time. The Natascha, like I said, isn't a terrible weapon. Terrible design? Yes. Terrible is ineffective? Absolutely not. It's still a minigun at the end of the day. But how does it compare? The Natascha actually had quite a few changes. Some may remember when the Natascha had 300 rounds rather than 200, but this was not a stat at release. In fact, it just had 2 stats when the weapon first came out. It looked like this: 100% chance to slow enemies on hit for 25% less damage done. So we can see right away it lacked the 30% slower spin-up speed and 20% damage resistance while below 50% health, or if the damage was to put you below 50% health. If we were to look at this at face value, you may say that it could have actually had a glow-up. First, we have to discuss the universal heavy changes. The one that would least impact my judgment is the damage penalty versus sentry guns. Level 2 sentry guns used to have a 20% damage resistance, and level 3s used to have a 33% damage resistance. Now it's 15% and 20% respectively. Spin-up speed used to also be 25% slower by default, so the difference isn't even that big between the modern day and the original. And finally, for downsides, Heavy used to move at 80 hammer units while revved up instead of 110. For reference, Sniper moves at 80 hammer units while scoped in. The one benefit that the miniguns used to have compared to now is the lack of an accuracy and damage ramp up downside, though even that can't save it because there was one final difference. Despite stating it had a 25% damage penalty, it was actually 33% in practice, and the strength of the slowdown was much less consistent and much weaker than it is now. Overall, the current Natascha is actually superior to the original one for many reasons. Don't get me wrong though, it was still a minigun and it could put in the work, but it was just a little bit worse at its job. May be a surprise to some of you, but this weapon has had its fair share of changes. Honestly, for the worse, since it effectively became the de facto item for this slot, with rarely any other item getting time in the limelight outside of gimmick loadouts. That description I'm sure you already caught on, it's the Sandvich.
I am full of sandwich, and I am coming for you!
The Sandvich is a secondary item for Heavy that replaces the shotgun. I know, classified info, don't go telling people. Eating it takes about 4 seconds or so, and it will heal you for 300 health, and dropping it on the floor will act as a medium health pack for whoever picks it up, friend or foe, except for the Heavy himself. If nobody wants his floor sandwich, he can pick it up for later use. It takes about 30 seconds to recharge, but if you pick up any health pack while at full HP, it will regenerate immediately, even if you pick up a small one. The modern Sandvich is pretty much the only thing I see Heavies here in 2025-2026 using. I feel like I spotted an albino buck or a 6-leaf clover if they're running anything else. Maybe a 5-leaf clover if it's a second banana, but the shotgun, panic attack, family business, the locust bar, buffalo steak sandwich outside of medieval mode, forget about it. They are a very rare breed. I do concede that it's hard to blame them because the self-healing as well as it being a medium health pack for your medic boyfriend or whoever eats it, which is only shared by the buffalo steak, makes sense. However, it wasn't always as it is today. The Sandvich was the first unlock and competed with the shotgun, which to a lot of players meant it became the de facto secondary because even though the shotgun was a lot more useful back then, due to the clunkiness of the minigun, it was hard to utilize properly for the vast majority of people. Though 2008 TF2 players would have crapped their pants had they been handed the modern day version of the Sandvich. First, let's discuss one thing it had over the modern day version. It didn't have a recharge. That's right, you could chomp down on this thing as much as you needed to. I know, pretty sweet deal, and it seems like it's impossible to beat, but beaten it was because, while it did have that one thing going for it, everything else, not so much. First, it didn't originally heal for 75 health per bite, which adds up to 300 for those who may have difficulty with math. It healed only 30 per bite, which added up to a grand total of 120. So while you could continuously eat it, it healed less and it took longer. While that is bad, possibly the biggest sin of all is it couldn't be dropped onto the ground for your teammates. All medic mains collectively shed a tear. Your big burly meat shield could not throw you a ham and cheese sandwich in the case that you get a splinter. He couldn't even drop it for himself to get an instant medium health pack like he could for some years when they finally added the mechanic. The original Sandvich was not bad by any stretch of the imagination, it did its job, but because of the quick healing and the ability to drop a medium health pack for anyone who needs it, I think it's safe to say it's had a decent glow up. I have decided to just leave out the Killing Gloves unboxing segment altogether just because it's gone through no real changes whatsoever since its debut in 2008. It's not worth making a whole segment about. With Heavy, we only have one stock weapon to cover once again because the shotgun has had no real changes for Heavy besides a reload animation being slightly changed. The weapon with significant changes is the minigun.
Killing you is full-time job now.
The minigun is what makes Heavy Weapons Guy, a weapon of mass destruction that can mow through enemies in the blink of an eye at close to mid-range, especially close range. If a Heavy is fully revved up and you run into him with no cover in sight, you might as well open your backpack or Instagram Reels just to pass the time as you wait to respawn. Natascha weighs 150 kilograms and fires... Here we go. The minigun is a Gatling-style gun that takes about 0.87 seconds to spin up. For every one ammo in quotes with a rate of fire of about 600 rounds per minute, it's a little bit slower than that. It's an attack interval of 0.105, so it's around there. It will fire 4 pellets, I guess you could say, which each deal 9 damage at base, 13.5 with max ramp up. Meaning if all 4 pellets land, it can deal 27 damage, 270 per second at mid-range, and can deal 54 in one instance, 540 damage per second-ish around there, at close range, which is pretty insane. This is assumed that the Heavy has been fully revved for at least 1 second, as the minigun has a 50% accuracy and damage penalty for the first second. As long as you stay revved up, you will retain the full damage and accuracy. As soon as you spin down, you must go through the whole process again. While spun up, Heavy's movement speed will also be reduced from 230 hammer units to 110 hammer units, and you'll be unable to move if you are crouching. Finally, it has a 15% damage penalty against level 2 sentries and a 20% damage penalty against level 3 sentries. The minigun is a great weapon, I don't think I even need to say it. A good Heavy with solid positioning can be an absolute pain to take down, especially if he's got a pocket medic. You do not want to come face to face with a fully spun Heavy, as it will not go well for you. Even other Heavies. Though, did it have a glow up? Well, let's look at the positive. Yes, positive, not positives unfortunately. There was one thing the original minigun had over the current, and that's that it lacked the 1 second damage and accuracy ramp up altogether. So as soon as you started firing, your damage and accuracy was 100%. This was changed to needing to be firing for 1 second in order to receive full damage and accuracy in June of 2014. Which was an awful change, as it meant that the moment you stopped firing, you had to go through the whole process again. It was then changed to requiring 1 second of consistent fire to get full damage and accuracy, but it could be retained by just staying spun up. Now, it doesn't require you to actually shoot, just that you're spun up for at least 1 second in general, so it's gone through a couple of iterations. While the original minigun didn't have to worry about this, it did have 3 downsides compared to modern day. First, it took 25% longer to spin up. just over a second, around 1.1 to 1.15 seconds, instead of 0.87 seconds. I couldn't get an exact number, but it's around there, which is likely why the damage penalty and accuracy penalty was eventually added a few years down the line, because heavies that were really good at jump revving could absolutely mow people down around corners and on tight maps. The modern day Natascha, for example, also takes 1.16 seconds to wind up, so that should give you a point of reference. It doesn't end there though. Heavy also moves slower all spun up, 80 hammer units instead of 110. 80 hammer units is how fast Sniper moves while scoped or while charging a rifle, with the exception of the Huntsman. To cap it all off, Heavy's minigun damage against sentries used to be 20% for level 2s instead of 15%, and 33% for level 3s rather than 20%. While he could still mow through sentry guns, it was a little bit harder. Of course, level 1 sentries, mini sentries, and dispensers and teleporters, those were all the same. The minigun was a great weapon even in 2007, and not having to worry about the weird damage and accuracy ramp-up stat was nice, but I think the modern minigun is just a bit better, especially with modern heavies who are a lot more aggressive. Not as much as some other weapons, but it's marginally better now than it was then. That will do it for the heavy segment. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Engineer will be next month. I will also be posting more major projects in the future. At least I hope so. Those should come out on the 10th of every month, every other month, or maybe even 2 months. It depends but I'll try to be rather consistent. Anyway, thank you again. I'll see you later.